Hello, everyone. Patrick and I will present the Twitter API and how to get access with Python. Before we start with writing a script for API requests, I will give you a short introduction of use cases. So what to use the Twitter API for in general. One can use it to post tweets, receive tweets corresponding to a specific user, hashtag, period, or location, or one can use the Twitter API to receive information about a user or tweet. So for example, one can receive the number of retweets, likes, and views, or the amount of followers and tweets of a user. But as we are especially interested in finance and accounting, I will also give you some use cases in the financial area. So use cases in the financial area. One can use Twitter data to do sentiment analysis. So one can use natural language processing, artificial intelligence, and textual analysis to identify the attitude of a writer with respect to a specific topic. So an example for this would be the S&P 500 Twitter Sentiment Index, which analyzes hashtags. So for example, $TSLA for Tesla. One can also use Twitter data for detecting shifts in consumer behavior. This means, for example, like Folio analyzes tweets in real time with the aim to identify consumer demand trends before they materialize in stock prices. Very similar to this is to connect trending business drivers to investable companies, and therefore an example is M-Science. Now we know what we could possibly use the Twitter API for, so I can now explain you how to get access to the API. So here you can see that in general, there are 3 different access levels: the essential, elevated, and academic research access level. And for all these 3 access levels, the requirement is to have already a Twitter account. Thereafter, we do recommend you to use the elevated access level because you do not only have the opportunity to receive far more tweets comparing to the essential access level, but you also have a higher amount of endpoints of the API you can receive. For the elevated access level, a special application is needed. So you are asked to provide, for example, the main purpose you want to use the API for and with whom you want to share the data. And while answering to these questions, we want to highlight that you want to get access to the API, of course. You can also apply for the academic research access level. Here, the requirements are that you need a specific research objective. You need to be a graduate or a PhD student or a researcher working for an academic institution, and you can use the Twitter data only for non-commercial use. After applying for the elevated access level, we now want to apply the simplest possibility to do our requests. And therefore, the TweeP package is very handy. So TweeP is an open source package that provides a convenient way to access the Twitter API with Python. It has a large functionality, including OAuth. So this means you can authenticate your requests using TweeP. You can also use the Twitter API class, which includes many methods that provide access to Twitter API endpoints. You can also use models. So this means that if we use the Twitter API class, we'll receive a TweeP model class instance. And from this onwards, we can use several methods to extract the information we are interested in. Furthermore, TweeP contains cursors, which enable us to work with large data sets, which means that if we use a cursor, we do not have to use pagination. And furthermore, we can also use streams using TweeP, and this gives us access to API endpoints in real time. So already we know everything to make our first request. Let's start implementing it in Python. How to implement TweeP in Python. So first of all, we of course have to pip install tweepy. Thereafter, we can import tweepy and other required packages. So for example, pandas, datetime, and from tweepy, we also import cursor. And then to authenticate our requests, we define API keys and tokens. So this means these access you have to replace with your own API keys and tokens, and you can find them under this link. So if you click on this link, you will be led to the developer portal of tweepy. And here, if you click under projects and apps, you can go to the project you want to work with. And here you can go on this key. And here are your keys. So you can either regenerate them or just store them directly. So these API key and secret are the consumer key and consumer secret. And the access token and secret is then the access token and access token secret, which you can see here. Thereafter, we can set up the connection to the API. So here we use the handy functionality of tweepy, the OAuth authenticator. And in this line, we call the API for the first time. And we set the wait on rate limit parameter equal to true, which means that if we are doing some API requests and we exceed our rate limits, then it will automatically wait until we have new limits available. We can also set up dates as they will be more convenient later on. So now we can really start with doing some API requests. So we first search for tweets or hashtags, tweets by hashtags or keywords. So here we do use the API API.search_tweets. So this returns a collection of relevant tweets matching to a specific query. And this query is what we define in the Q parameter. So we use COVID and hashtag COVID or COVID-19. So as you can see, you can also use all these Boolean operators. You can also check out this link here where it is a little bit more explained in further detail. And we can also set the optional parameter until equal to today, which means that we will only get tweets created before today. And we can set the language to English of all the tweets we receive. And this is also optional. Then we use the cursor method, which I explained before. And we restrict it to only receive 40 tweets in total. And we can also retrieve tweets from a specific user. So for example, we can use the API.userTimeline. This returns the 20 most recent statuses posted from the authenticating user. But we can also set the screen name equal to some other accounts, so for example, to Elon Musk, and then we will receive the 20 most recent statuses posted by Elon Musk. We can also set the include RTS equal to false, which means that it will strip any retweets. There's also another optional parameter, which is called exclude replies, and this will prevent replies from appearing in the return timeline. Again, we use the cursor and restrict the total tweets received to 40. Then if we do these requests, we get some tweet objects, and these we want, of course, to print or to see. And therefore, we can first use just a simple loop and print them. And here we use this, so we get a tweet object, which is a tweet model, and then we can use the text method to extract only the text from the tweet. Or we can use the favorite count method to only get the favorite, so the number of likes from these tweets. But of course, just printing it is not very sophisticated. So we can also create a data frame, which is done here. Of course, there are also further useful methods from Tweepy. So for example, there's some timeline methods. For example, API.home_timeline. It returns the 20 most recent statuses, including retweets posted by the authenticating user, and that's user's friend. And we can also use methods for statuses. So for example, API.retweets, it returns up to 100 of the first retweets of a given tweet. So the ID is the ID of the tweet here. And count specifies the number of retweets to receive. And there are also direct message methods. So API.send_direct_message. It returns direct messages sent by the authenticating user. And here the full text would be the full text message you want to send. And friendship is another method from Tweepy. So here you can check whether a friendship between user A and user B exists. And this will return true if the friendship exists and false otherwise. And then there's also trends. So for example, API.trends_place. And this returns the top 10 trending topics for a specific location.
So after Birte showed you how to get the Twitter API and how to initialize it in Tweepy, I'm going to show you some examples on how to use it on a financial context. And maybe you get some inspiration or something like that on how you can implement it on your next project. But first, let me show you the remarks you need to think at when you're working with the Twitter API. So the Twitter API only provides data for the past few weeks. So if you want to have older data, this is not possible. I'm going to show you in my example later on what this really means. But if you, for example, want to analyze a past event, then it's too late now. So if you think about the outbreak of COVID in China, which was about March 2020, you will not find any tweets about this using the standard Twitter API. Furthermore, which is, in my opinion, a larger problem, is that according to Twitter, the standard API is focused on relevance and not on completeness. So basically, this means that some tweets and users may not be missing from the query. Now you may ask yourself, how is relevance defined, and does this hinder me in my academic research? And to be honest, we can't answer this. So Twitter will not provide any guidelines on how they classify relevance and not. So it's just arbitrary. But we don't think that this might hinder you. Of course, you will not get every tweet. Maybe some small irrelevant tweets, or maybe some small tweets pass through, but you will get all in all a very large data set of tweets. And because of like a law of big data, this will not be that much a problem. Furthermore, you need to pay attention to rate and access limits. So as Birte showed on the slides at the beginning, every access level has different queries per month you can take and a different number of tweets you can receive from it. Also, like rate limits can be very frustrating. So when I programmed the example, of course, I tried a lot and downloaded and requested a lot from the API, but you were only able to request a specific number of tweets within a quarter of an hour. And then often there was like an error message, like your rate limit exceeded. So I just needed to wait again, try myself another time. And this can be really frustrating, and you need to pay attention for that. So what you can do is you can use like business APIs Twitter is offering. But the problem there is that they will cost you money to subscribe. So when you do it for academic reasons or maybe just personal interest reasons, this is definitely not recommended from us. However, if you want to use it for business purpose, you need it because the standard API is also only for non-commercial use. So now let's jump right into an example. To maybe give you a bit an overview of what's possible, as first example, we've chosen the sentiment analysis during the election of Joe Biden, the President of the United States in 2021. First of all, at this point, we expect that you already have set your access levels and initialized the Twitter API, like Birte showed before. And when you have done this, you can start with the example here. So first of all, we define a search variable, which is the hashtag Biden. When doing such an analysis on a large topic like the presidential election, it is always recommended to use more than one hashtag. So you also could use hashtag election 2021, or maybe also hashtag Trump because he was the competitor. So this is just a minimum example we used, also kind of due to the restriction of the query limits. So then we define variables. So we use since before, where we start our time frame before the election, and until before, where we want our time frame before the election to last. We've chosen this date such that it goes around the election. And then we are looking at after, which we defined roughly half a year after the election. The goal of the analysis is obviously to show if the sentiment or the tone against Biden changed after he was president. So maybe he was super euphoric before during the election, but now it is more like, okay, he's just another president. That's what we basically can show with this analysis. Then we initialize our cursor object. So due to the syntax Birte already showed, so we call our API search tweets. So the query will be our search, like hashtag Biden. Language, of course, is English. And we want it to last from since before to until. We will do the same for the tweets after the election as comparison. And we'll do it with since after and until after. So as a remark for you, these dot items in parentheses 50 is just done to the time restrictions and the rate restrictions of the essential access level. You can also like delete these 50 in parentheses. The dot items in blank parentheses are needed, but the 50 can be deleted. Then you will receive all tweets that are available in this time period, and you can work with them. So then we just make a blank list where we want to store the tweets in it, and finally loop over the tweets before object, which were filled in the step before, and fill all the tweets into one list. Of course, we do this before and after the election. Then finally, we will build a data frame out of it, what you can see here, and we display the data frame. So if you now have a look at the data, you might think, okay, something went wrong, because before election, there's always none. However, as you may recall, I've mentioned that the Twitter API only provides data for the last 2 weeks, probably. So what we've showed here is that this is really true. The date before the election was in mid-2021, which is obviously longer ago than 2 weeks. So we will not get any tweets for that. Same tweets after election, we will only get the most recent 2 weeks. I've chosen today as an end date, and we will only get the recent 2 weeks. So if you want to do this, you have two options. Either you plan your project well ahead and start saving these tweets before the election. However, this is not really convenient. And the other option is then just to take a business API, or we've read that there are also some third-party providers which can provide you Twitter tweets. However, this is not in line with Twitter's privacy policy. So from now on, you can perform classical NLP and textual analysis tasks, like a sentiment analysis. And because social media uses very special words and also emojis, there are special dictionaries which can be used for Twitter. When you now go on with your data cleaning, like you see, you have line breaks here. You all should be familiar with this, but there's one big difference to normal textual analysis. Let's say it like this: you have emojis. One way you can handle emojis, we will show in the next example. So the next example is, of course, when we're talking about Twitter, we need to mention Elon Musk. So we are analyzing the impact of Elon Musk's tweets on maybe the Tesla stock or whatever you want to do. So again, we make a empty list called tweets. We initialize our cursor object. We take the user timeline of the user Elon Musk. So we get all tweets from his timeline. And this time we just let it items and empty parentheses because there are not that much tweets in the recent 2 weeks. So it's handleable data from a time perspective here. And as before, we iterate over every tweet and store it in a list. Then this will look something like that. You see all tweets of Elon Musk in the past 2 weeks, and what he's tweeted. As you can see, there are emojis. This data is not ready to analyze. However, when we say we want to analyze the impact on the Tesla stock, we are maybe interested in tweets he mentions Tesla. So let's define a function where the text is taken and it's looked for the word Tesla. So then with text.find, we'll return the index. And if the index is -1, that's the number it will return when the word is not in it. The result will be 0. Elsewise, we'll get a 1 as a result. So let's call the function and have a look in which tweets Tesla is in. So then we can define relevant tweets as this tweets where the Tesla column is equal to 1 because our function will return 1 when Tesla was mentioned. So now we're one step further because we know when he mentioned Tesla. Our last problem is if you look, for example, here at row 19, you see like these fire emojis. That's really hard to analyze because emojis are some special Unicode text and have no direct word. But we can define a function where these Unicode texts are removed. So you can see these functions that there are some Unicode patterns, which are the most emoticons in it. We can also say map, transport symbols, and all these things. However, you need to remember that not every emoticons are removed like that. The most common ones are, but if you have some very special emoticons, it can happen that they are out of this Unicode range. So let's call the function and make a new column tweets edited. And what you can see now is that the fire here at line 19 disappeared. So we just deleted it. Now, another option you can handle these emoticons with is that you can translate them into text. Because you might say, okay, emoticons have a meaning. You not use them arbitrarily, use them to support some messages. Then you can define a similar function like that, but you can translate them into a text. From here on, you have everything you need to run your analysis. So we will not show it because that will be out of scope for this presentation. The same like the ending of the Biden example. It would just be too much. But as a maybe idea, you can now get the dates of the tweets with the datetime object. And then you can receive the Tesla stock price and have a look what happened to the stock price when Elon Musk tweeted. So you can take these tweets, analyze the sentiment, and look like great work by Tesla team worldwide is obviously a positive sentiment. So you might look what the Tesla stock did at this time. And then you can just be creative, do whatever you want. Now you have the data you need for it. And yeah, that was our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to make a post in Piazza. So to sum up, Twitter API has a lot of advantages. You can easily get Twitter data. you can analyze, especially for like sentiment analysis. But there are also major drawbacks, like not every tweet is received. You have these rate limits and you only receive the most recent tweets. But if you want to have anything special, maybe more detailed, just go ahead and ask on Piazza. We are happy to answer anything. Thanks a lot.